They say kissing a Mafia boss will get you killed. I kissed him because staying alive meant becoming his problem. Club venom pulsed with crimson light, bass rattling through my ribs like a second heartbeat. Soul's underground elite packed the space, designer suits and diamonds glittering under neon halos. I pressed against the bar, suppressants burning through my system too fast, the chemical sweetness of my omega scent beginning to leak through the cracks. Then I saw him. Choi Seo-jun. My ex. The prosecutor's son who couldn't understand that no meant anything. He entered with 2 police escorts flanking him like trophies, his eyes scanning the crowd with that obsessive hunger I knew too well. My chest tightened. No exits. Trapped. But there, in the VIP section bathed in blood-red light, sat Seoul's most dangerous man. Kang Il-han. 28, tailored black suit stretched across broad shoulders, dark eyes that could strip flesh from bone with a glance. His presence made the crowd part instinctively, like prey recognizing an apex predator. I didn't think. I moved. My legs carried me through the sea of bodies, past security who didn't dare stop me, straight into that crimson sanctuary. Il-han's gaze lifted, lethal curiosity flickering across his features. I grabbed his collar, feeling expensive silk beneath my trembling fingers, and pressed my lips to his. The entire club went silent. His hand snapped to my waist, possessive and burning hot even through my shirt. The kiss lasted 3 seconds. 3 seconds that rewrote my entire life. When I pulled back, his midnight eyes locked onto mine, dangerous and amused. "You just claimed me, little Omega," he whispered, voice like smoke and sin. "I hope you know what that means." My heart hammered against my ribs. Did I just escape one monster by kissing another? Before I tell you what happens next, subscribe to Starry-Eyed Lovers, and tell me where you're watching from. Il-han didn't push me away. His hand remained firm on my waist, thumb pressing against my hip bone like he was testing whether I was real. Up close, he was devastating, sharp jawline, a thin scar cutting through his left eyebrow, and those eyes that seemed to see straight through my desperate gamble to the terror beneath. He inhaled slowly, deliberately, reading me the way alphas did, pulling apart the layers of my scent like pages in a book I couldn't hide. "Fear," he murmured, almost to himself. "Not seduction." His lips curved slightly. "Interesting." Behind me, Seo-jun's voice cut through the music. "Jaehyun, what the hell do you think you're?" Il-han lifted 2 fingers. Just 2. The movement was minimal, almost lazy, but the effect was immediate. For men in black suits materialized from the shadows, moving with practiced efficiency. They surrounded Seo-jun and his police escorts like water flowing around stones. "Gentlemen," one of Il-han's men said smoothly, "the boss requests you leave. Now, do you know who I am?" Seo-jun's voice climbed, shrill with indignation. "My father is leaving," the man repeated, and something in his tone made it clear this wasn't a negotiation. I watched over Il-han's shoulder as they escorted Seo-jun out, his protests fading into the bass-heavy darkness. The police didn't intervene. They wouldn't. Not here. Not against Kang Il-han. "Look at me." Il-han's command pulled my attention back. His hand slid from my waist to my chin, tilting my face up. The VIP section felt impossibly small suddenly, the red light painting everything in shades of blood and shadow. "You kissed me in public," he said, each word deliberate and weighted. "That means something in my world." My throat tightened. I didn't know." "You did." His thumb brushed across my lower lip, and I hated how my breath caught. "Maybe not the specifics, but you knew enough. You chose the most dangerous man in this club for a reason." He was right. Some primal part of me had recognized that only a bigger predator could keep Seo-jun's claws away. Il-han released my chin but didn't step back. "So here's how this works. If you're lying to me, if this is some elaborate game or setup, you die. Quickly, if you're lucky." His voice held no malice, just cold fact. "If you're not lying, if you genuinely need protection, then you're under mine." "I don't understand." "In my world, a public kiss is a claim," he explained, like he was teaching me the rules of a game I'd already started playing. "You sat in my lap, kissed me in front of 200 witnesses, many of whom work for me or my rivals. As far as anyone here is concerned, you're mine now. My responsibility. My problem." The words settled over me like a heavy coat. Protection, yes, but also possession. Ownership in a world where such things still had teeth. "And that makes me a target," I said quietly, pieces clicking together. "For your enemies." Something flickered in his eyes. Approval, maybe. "Smart Omega." "Yes. Anyone wanting to hurt me now has a convenient pressure point sitting in my VIP section, wearing cheap suppressants and shaking like a leaf." Heat flooded my face, shame and anger mixing. "I didn't ask for this." "No," he agreed. "But you started it anyway." He reached into his jacket, pulling out a phone. Sleek black, unmarked. He pressed it into my palm. Untraceable. My number is already programmed. Only number in there. I stared at the device, its weight somehow heavier than it should be. Don't call the police, Ihan continued, his tone shifting into something darker. They can't protect you. Your ex just proved that, walking in here with cops like accessories. The law works for men like him, not men like me. And definitely not for Omegas trying to escape them. Then who protects me? The question came out smaller than I intended. Ihan's smile was sharp enough to draw blood. I can. He stepped back finally, creating space between us, though his scent, leather and rain and something dangerously electric, still wrapped around me like smoke. Go home, Min Jae-hyun. He knew my name. Of course he did. When your ex makes his next move, and he will, you call me. Not the police. Not your friends. Me. And if I don't want, you already made your choice when you kissed me. His eyes held mine, unflinching. The only question now is whether you're smart enough to accept the consequences. Because in my world, protection isn't free. It's bought with loyalty, trust, and the understanding that once you're mine, you don't run. The phone burned in my hand. Behind Ihan, his men had returned, flanking him like shadows given form. The club's music pulsed back to life, the moment of frozen tension breaking. I should refuse. Should throw the phone back and walk out with whatever dignity I had left. Instead, I closed my fingers around it. Ihan's smile widened. Good Omega. Now go. Before your scent draws more attention than either of us wants. I turned and walked through the parting crowd, feeling his gaze on my back like a brand, the untraceable phone heavy in my pocket, and my fate sealed with a kiss I couldn't take back. The call came 3 days later, while I was mixing an iced Americano during the morning rush at Blend Cafe. My manager's voice cut through the espresso machine's hiss. Jae-hyun. Office. Now. Manager Kim's face was granite when I entered, her usually warm expression replaced with something cold and final. Behind her desk sat a man in an expensive suit, his smile as fake as his concern. Min Jae-hyun, he said, sliding a business card across the desk. Prosecutor Choi's office. Seo Jun's father. We've received several complaints about your associations, bringing criminal elements into respectable establishments. My stomach dropped. I didn't. You were seen leaving Club Venom with known Mafia affiliates, he continued smoothly. Establishments that employ individuals with such connections create liability issues. I'm sure you understand. Manager Kim wouldn't meet my eyes. I'm sorry, Jae-hyun. I can't risk the cafe's reputation. You're terminated effective immediately. The word hung in the air like a noose. Terminated. Not fired, terminated. Clinical. Final. This is because I rejected Seo Jun, I said quietly, looking at the prosecutor's lackey. This is retaliation. His smile never wavered. This is protecting legitimate businesses from criminal infiltration. I suggest you reconsider your choice of companions, Mr. Min. For your own safety, of course. They escorted me out through the front during peak hours, every customer watching as I collected my apron and name tag. Manager Kim handed me my final paycheck in an envelope, her hands shaking slightly. She knew. Everyone knew. But knowing didn't matter when prosecutors wielded power like weapons. The morning air hit me like a slap. I stood on the sidewalk, watching through the window as they immediately hired someone else. A beta girl who'd been waiting for my spot. 30 minutes. That's how long it took to erase me. The untraceable phone burned in my pocket. One call. That's all it would take. But I didn't call. Pride, maybe. Or stupidity. The idea that accepting Ihan's help would prove Seo Jun right. That I couldn't survive without an alpha controlling my life. I'd figure something else out. Find another job. Stay invisible. I made it 2 blocks before the black Genesis pulled up beside me. 3 SUVs flanked it, moving with military precision. Pedestrians scattered instinctively, recognizing predators when they saw them. The Genesis's window rolled down, revealing Ihan in the back seat, looking entirely too comfortable for 11 in the morning. Get in. No. I kept walking. The car rolled forward, matching my pace. That wasn't a request. I don't take orders from you. Clearly. His voice held dark amusement. Since you also don't take my calls. Or my protection. Or apparently my very sensible advice about how these things work. I stopped, turning to face him. How did you even know about your job? Ihan stepped out, and suddenly the street felt smaller. He wore a charcoal suit today, no tie, looking like violence wrapped in expensive wool. I know everything that happens to what's mine, Jae-hyun. Especially when a prosecutor's office makes moves against you. I'm not yours. Tell that to the people who saw you kiss me. He gestured toward the cafe. Or them. Through the window, I saw Manager Kim watching nervously. Ihon's men had already entered, flanking the counter like monuments to quiet menace. One of them was speaking to Manager Kim, her face going pale with each word. "What are you doing?" I demanded. "Settling accounts." Ihon's tone was casual, like discussing the weather. "Your manager just accepted money to fire you on false pretenses. In my world, that requires compensation." "Stop. I don't want." But his men were already leaving, one of them carrying a briefcase that he set at my feet. The metallic click of the lock's opening seemed too loud. 20 million Korean wons won. Crisp bills stacked neatly, more money than I'd see in 6 months of bartending. Blood money. Guilt money. "Your lost wages," Ihon said. 6 months' worth, plus interest for the inconvenience. Rage flared hot in my chest. "I'm not your charity case." "No." His voice went cold, that dangerous edge surfacing. "You're the Omega who kissed me in front of my entire organization. Who made yourself my responsibility whether I wanted it or not. That makes you mine to protect, mine to provide for, mine to keep safe from men like Prosecutor Choi, who think power means they can crush whoever they want. I didn't ask for this. You asked the moment your lips touched mine." He stepped closer, crowding my space. "You think that kiss was just a kiss? In my world, it was a contract written in front of 200 witnesses. You claimed me. That means I claim you back. This isn't protection," I spat, kicking the briefcase. "This is possession. Call it whatever helps you sleep at night." Ihon's eyes glittered dangerously. "But when Prosecutor Choi comes after your apartment next, or your university enrollment, or your sister's scholarship, and you'll understand the difference between protection and possession." My blood ran cold. "My sister? You think men like him stop at one victory?" Ihon's voice softened slightly, almost pitying. "You humiliated his son. He'll take everything from you until you crawl back to Seojun begging." I grabbed the briefcase, hands shaking with fury, and threw it toward him. Bills scattered across the sidewalk like snow. Ihon caught my wrist mid-throw, his grip iron strong but not painful. "You don't understand what you started," he said quietly, pulling me close enough that his scent wrapped around me. Leather and rain, and that electric charge that made my suppressants scream warnings. "That kiss made you mine. Fighting me won't change it. Running won't change it. The only question is whether you survive long enough to accept it." His words hung between us like a prophecy, and somewhere in the distance, I heard my phone buzzing. Seojun's number. Again. I found Ihon's office on the 37th floor of a glass tower in Gangnam, where Seoul's money lived and breathed in chrome and marble. The elevator ride up felt like ascending into another world, one where the air tasted expensive and every surface reflected wealth back at itself. His receptionist tried to stop me. A polished beta woman with perfect hair and a perfect smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Mr. Kong doesn't take walk-ins. Tell him Min Jae-hyun is here." I kept my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. "He'll see me." She made a call, her expression shifting from professional dismissal to carefully neutral surprise. "He says to send you in." The office stretched before me like a statement of power. Marble floors caught the afternoon light streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows that framed Seoul's skyline like a painting. Ihon sat behind a desk of black glass and steel, reviewing documents with the same focused intensity he probably used to dismantle his enemies. He didn't look up. "I was wondering when you'd come. I'm returning your money." I dropped the envelope on his desk. I'd collected every scattered bill from the sidewalk, my pride demanding I give back what I couldn't accept. "I don't want it." "Then donate it. Burn it. I don't care." He finally raised his eyes, and the impact of his full attention made my breath catch. "The debt is settled regardless of what you do with the payment." "There is no debt." The words exploded out of me, months of fear and frustration finding a target. "You're just like him, treating me like property you can buy and own and control." Ihon stood slowly, deliberately, like a predator rising from rest. "I'm nothing like him." "Really? You show up uninvited, throw money at my problems, decide what I need without asking. I protect what's mine." His voice cut through my anger like a blade. "There's a difference. I'm not yours." I stepped forward, closing the distance, refusing to be intimidated by his size or his reputation or the way his presence filled the room. That kiss was survival, not a contract. In my world, they're the same thing. He moved around the desk, and suddenly we were too close, the space between us charged with something dangerous. "You think I wanted an Omega who brings chaos into my carefully constructed empire? You think I planned to spend my resources protecting someone who throws money back in my face? Then let me go. You're free to leave." But his eyes said otherwise. "The door's right there." "You just said." I said you're mine to protect. I didn't say I'd cage you. Ihon's voice softened slightly, something almost gentle beneath the steel. Seojun cages you because he's weak. Because the only way he can keep you is to clip your wings and lock you away where no one else can see how beautiful you are. The words hit differently than I expected, finding cracks in my armor. I don't cage beautiful things, he continued, each word precise and weighted. I keep them safe so they can fly. You want freedom? I'm offering choice. Choose to stay. Choose to accept my protection. Choose to let me stand between you and men who would destroy you for daring to say no. That's not choice, I said, but my voice had lost its conviction. That's just a prettier cage. Is it? He stepped back, creating space, and gestured toward the door. Then leave right now. Walk out. I won't stop you. I won't send my men after you. I won't force you into my protection. My feet didn't move. Go, Ihon said, his tone harder now. Prove that you don't need me. Go back to your apartment that Seojun knows the address to. Go find another job that his father won't destroy with a single phone call. Go protect your sister with restraining orders that the police won't enforce. Each word was a hammer blow against the wall of my pride. But when Seojun finds you again, and he will because men like him always do, don't call me. His eyes held mine, unflinching. Don't come running back when you realize that pride doesn't stop fists, independence doesn't stop stalkers, and freedom means nothing when you're too afraid to leave your apartment. The office fell silent except for the muted sounds of the city beyond the windows. Seoul sprawled below us, millions of people living their lives, unaware that mine was balanced on the edge of a decision I didn't want to make. I walked toward the door. My hand touched the handle, cool metal against my palm. One turn. That's all it would take. Walk out with my dignity intact, prove that I didn't need an alpha, especially not a criminal one, to survive. But my hand wouldn't turn. Behind me, Ihon waited. Not speaking. Not moving. Just giving me the choice he'd promised, even though we both knew what it cost him to step back. Seojun had never stepped back. Never given me space. Never offered choice. Only demands wrapped in declarations of love that felt like nooses. I hate that you're right, I whispered, my forehead pressing against the door. The silence stretched. Then Ihon's voice, closer now, just behind my shoulder. I know. My hand fell from the handle. The choice made itself, written in the exhaustion of running, the terror of being alone, and the bitter truth that sometimes survival meant accepting help from the very darkness you feared. Ihon took me to a pojangmaka in Itaewon, far from Gangnam's polished towers. The street tent restaurant glowed orange in the night, plastic tarps flapping in the autumn wind, the smell of grilling pork and kimchi thick in the air. It was the kind of place where salarymen drank away their stress and students celebrated on cheap budgets, worlds away from his glass office and black Genesis. No bodyguards. No SUVs. Just Ihon in a simple black sweater and jeans, looking almost human as he slid onto the plastic stool across from me. This is where I started, he said, ordering 2 bottles of soju and samgyeopsal without looking at the menu. Before the empire. Before the reputation. Just a kid trying to survive in Itaewon's back alleys. The ajumma running the tent eyed him with recognition and something like fondness, calling him Ihana like she'd known him when he was young and hungry. Maybe she had. The soju arrived in cheap green bottles, the pork sizzling on the tabletop grill between us. Ihon poured with proper etiquette, turning away as he filled his own glass, and I found myself doing the same, old habits from a culture that valued respect even in dive bars. Jeonbi, he said, and we drank. The alcohol burned down my throat, familiar and grounding. Around us, the tent buzzed with life. Conversations in Korean and English, laughter, the clatter of metal chopsticks on plates. Normal people living normal lives, unaware they were sharing space with Seoul's underground king. I was 15 when they killed my parents, Ihon said suddenly, his voice low enough that only I could hear. He flipped the pork with practiced ease, the meat charring perfectly. A Chabel's son, high on cocaine and privilege, ran a red light. T-boned my father's car. They died instantly. I set down my glass, the casual atmosphere evaporating. The police called it an accident. Vehicular manslaughter, maybe 5 years if prosecuted. His smile was bitter as winter. But the Chabel paid them off. Bought witnesses. Buried evidence. The case disappeared like it never happened, and the son went back to his life like my parents were just inconvenient obstacles he'd removed from his path. Ihon, I learned something that day. He met my eyes, and the darkness there was vast and ancient. The law doesn't protect people like us. It protects people like them, the wealthy, the connected, the ones who can afford justice. So I built my own justice. Started in these streets, collecting debts, protecting the vendors and workers the police ignored. Built an empire where power wasn't about birth or money, but about keeping your word and standing between the vulnerable and the monsters. He served me pork wrapped in lettuce, the gesture oddly domestic despite the conversation. You became what you are because they failed you too, I said quietly, understanding clicking into place. The system was supposed to protect you, and it chose money instead. Exactly. Ihan poured more soju. I'm not a good man, Jaehyun. I've done terrible things. But I'm the monster who keeps worse monsters away. The law won't protect you from Seo Jun's family connections. But I will. The parallel was too obvious to ignore. Seo Jun's father wielding prosecutor power like a weapon. Ihan's parents erased by chaebol privilege. Me, caught between the law that should protect me and the criminal who actually could. He isolated me first. I heard myself saying, the soju loosening the words I'd kept locked away. Seo Jun. It was subtle at the beginning. Comments about my friends being bad influences. Showing up at my study groups uninvited. Making me feel guilty for having a life outside of him. Ihan listened without interrupting, chopsticks still as I spoke. Then it escalated. He'd check my phone, demand to know where I was every minute. When I tried to break up with him the first time, he threatened to hurt himself. Said it would be my fault if he died. The memory tasted like ash. So I stayed. And it got worse. The art. Ihan prompted gently. I was studying design at Seoul National University. Painting was my escape, the one thing that was mine. My voice cracked slightly. He destroyed my portfolio 3 weeks before my final exhibition. Slashed every canvas. Said I was spending too much time on art and not enough on him. I failed the semester. Lost my scholarship. The tense, cheerful noise felt distant now, like we existed in a bubble separate from the world. When I finally left him, he started stalking me. Following me to work. Sending hundreds of messages. I got a restraining order, but the police wouldn't enforce it. His father made sure of that. I drank more soju, needing the burn. Then he started threatening my sister. She's 19, just started at Yonsei. He said if I didn't come back, he'd make sure she suffered for my choices. Ihan's hand covered mine on the table. The touch was warm, solid, grounding me before I could spiral into the panic that always lurked beneath the surface. He'll never touch you again, Ihan said, and it wasn't a promise. It was a fact delivered with the certainty of someone who'd made many things disappear. Or your sister. I give you my word. In his world, I was learning words meant everything. When does protection become love? I asked, the question slipping out before I could stop it. The soju's fault, maybe, or the intimacy of sharing trauma under flickering tent lights. Ihan's thumb brushed across my knuckles, a gesture so gentle it contradicted everything I knew about him. When you stop counting the cost and start counting the moments. My phone buzzed against the table. Once. Twice. 17 times in rapid succession. Ihan's expression hardened as I picked it up with my free hand, his other still covering mine like an anchor. 17 missed calls. All from Seo Jun. And one photo message. My blood turned to ice as the image loaded. My sister, Min Ji-woo, leaving her lecture hall at Yonsei University. The photo was taken from across the quad, telephoto lens catching her laughing with friends, completely unaware she was being watched. The caption beneath made my stomach revolt. She looks so much like you. It would be a shame if something happened to that pretty face. Ihan took the phone from my shaking hand, his jaw tightening as he read the message. When he looked up, his eyes held the same lethal promise I'd seen that first night at Club Venom. Make the call, he said quietly, sliding my phone back to me. Get your sister somewhere safe. Now. The pojamika's warmth couldn't touch the cold fear spreading through my chest as I dialed Jiwoo's number with trembling fingers. Praying she'd answer, praying I wasn't already too late. Before I tell you what happens next, subscribe to Starry-Eyed Lovers, and tell me where you're watching from. Jiwoo was safe. Ihan's men had already been watching her. Something he'd arranged the moment I'd mentioned her name. They'd escorted her to a secure apartment in Gangnam before Seo Jun's photographer could do more than take pictures. But the threat had crossed a line, and I could see it in the set of Ihan's shoulders as we left the pojangmaka. I need to see it, I said as he opened the Genesis's door for me. Show me who you really are. Ihan paused, his hand on the door frame. You don't want to see that. I do. I met his eyes, something hardening in my chest. If I'm choosing this, choosing you, then I need to know what that means. No more shadows. No more protection from the truth. Something shifted in his expression. Respect, maybe, or recognition that I wasn't the trembling Omega from Club Venom anymore. All right, he said quietly. But you don't get to unsee this, Jaehyun. The warehouse sat in an industrial district near the Han River, anonymous among dozens of identical buildings. But inside, it had been transformed into something else, part courtroom, part prison, wholly terrifying. Concrete floors, metal beams, and in the center, under harsh fluorescent lights, a man tied to a chair. He was maybe 40, well-dressed once, though his suit was torn and bloodied now. When he saw Ihan enter, he started begging in Korean peppered with English curse words. "Please, I can pay, I have money." Kim Tae-sung. Ihan's voice cut through the pleading like a blade. Omega trafficker. Specializes in children aged 12 to 16. Sells them to wealthy clients who prefer their victims too young and too terrified to fight back. My stomach turned. Around us, Ihan's men stood silent, witnesses to whatever justice was about to unfold. "We found 6 Omegas in your basement," Ihan continued, circling the chair slowly. "The youngest was 13. She'd been missing for 3 months. Her parents thought she was dead. I didn't hurt them." Kim Tae-sung's voice climbed in pitch. I was just the middleman, I didn't." Ihan moved faster than I could track, his fist connecting with the man's jaw with a crack that echoed through the warehouse. But it wasn't wild violence. It was controlled, precise, each strike calculated to cause pain without killing. "You facilitated their rape," Ihan said, his voice never rising. "You profited from their trauma. You looked 13-year-old children in the eye and sold them like merchandise." Another hit. The man's head snapped back, blood spraying from his split lip. I should have been horrified. Should have run. Should have seen Ihan as the monster he claimed to be. But watching him deliver justice to someone who'd preyed on Omega children like me, like Ji-woo could have been, I felt something different. Safety. For the first time in months, I felt safe. "The law won't touch you," Ihan continued, methodical in his violence. "Your clients include 2 judges, a police commissioner, and a National Assembly member. The system protects you because you service the people who run it." He pulled out a knife, and Kim Tae-sung whimpered. But Ihan didn't stab. Instead, he cut the ropes binding the man to the chair. "So here's my justice," Ihan said. "You have 24 hours to leave Korea. If you're still in the country tomorrow night, I'll find you. And next time, I won't be this merciful." His men dragged Kim Tae-sung out, the man sobbing promises and thanks, not understanding that mercy from Kong Ihan was more terrifying than his wrath. The warehouse fell silent. Ihan cleaned his bloodied knuckles with a handkerchief, his movements precise and practiced. "Still think I'm like your ex?" he asked without looking at me. I walked toward him slowly, my shoes clicking on concrete. When I reached him, I took the handkerchief from his hand and finished cleaning the blood myself, the intimacy of the gesture speaking louder than words. "No," I said quietly. "Seo-jun hurts because he's cruel. Because hurting me makes him feel powerful." I pressed the cloth against his split knuckle, where one of his strikes had caught bone. "You hurt because you care. Because you're the only thing standing between monsters and the people they prey on." Ihan's other hand came up, cupping my face with surprising gentleness. "I told you I wasn't a good man. Good men let Omega children get trafficked because the law says they can't intervene." I leaned into his touch despite the blood, despite the violence still hanging in the air like smoke. "You're something better. You're effective." The moment stretched between us, heavy with understanding and acceptance of what we both were. Him, the monster who protected monsters' victims, and me, the Omega who'd finally stopped running from the only shelter that worked. The warehouse door slammed open. Ihan's second in command, a man called Min-soo, entered with his phone in hand, his expression grim. "Boss, we have a problem." Ihan didn't release my face, but his attention sharpened. "Speak." Choi Seo-jun just filed a missing persons report. He's claiming Jaehyun was kidnapped from Blend Cafe 3 days ago. Min-soo's jaw tightened. He's got witness statements, security footage edited to look like coercion, and his father backing the story. "Police are issuing a warrant for your arrest." My blood went cold. He's using the law as a weapon. Of course he is. Ihan's voice held dark amusement. It's the only weapon men like him know how to use. He finally released my face, but caught my hand instead. "The question is whether you're ready to stand beside me when they come. Because once you choose me publicly, there's no going back." Outside, I could already hear sirens approaching, the law finally coming for the monster who dared protect what they'd abandoned. The police came at dawn, battering down my apartment door with a warrant that had Prosecutor Choi's signature bleeding through every line. I wasn't there. Ihan had insisted I stay at a hotel after the warehouse, somewhere Seo-jun couldn't track. But his men called me within minutes of the raid, their voices tight with something that might have been anger or pity. "You need to come," Min-soo said. "Now." Ihan sent a car, but I insisted on seeing it alone first. Some stubborn part of me needed to face whatever Seo-jun had done without Ihan's shadow protecting me from the worst of it. The driver waited downstairs while I climbed the familiar stairs to my fourth-floor walk-up, each step heavier than the last. The door hung open, splintered where the police had forced entry. Yellow tape crisscrossed the frame, but no one stopped me from ducking under it. Maybe they wanted me to see. Maybe that was part of Seo-jun's plan. The smell hit me first. Red paint, acrid and chemical, thick enough to taste. Then I saw what he'd done. My apartment had been destroyed with surgical precision. Every canvas I'd been rebuilding my portfolio with shredded. Not torn carelessly, but cut methodically with a blade. Each piece of art dissected like he was performing an autopsy on my dreams. Months of work reduced to ribbons of color bleeding across the floor. My books, pulled from shelves and pages ripped out. My clothes, scattered and slashed. My laptop, smashed beyond repair, all my digital work gone with it. Even the photographs of my parents, dead for 5 years now, had been torn from their frames, their faces scored with blade marks. But worse than the destruction were the photographs taped to my bedroom wall. Dozens of them. Me sleeping. Me in the shower, water streaming down my body. Me changing clothes. Me in moments I'd thought were private, moments that should have been mine alone. Seo-jun had been inside my apartment for weeks. Maybe months. Watching. Documenting. Claiming my privacy like it belonged to him. And on the wall above my bed, painted in that same red that looked too much like blood, were words that made my knees buckle. You can't hide from me. I sank to the floor among the ruins of my independence, surrounded by shredded art and violated privacy, and something inside me finally broke. Not the quiet cracking that had been happening since Seo-jun started stalking me, but a complete shattering of the illusion that I could do this alone. My hands shook as I pulled out the untraceable phone Ihan had given me. I'd kept it charged, kept it close, but hadn't used it. Hadn't wanted to admit I needed it. I called. He answered on the first ring. Jae-hyun, I can't do this alone anymore. The words came out broken, barely more than a whisper. I tried. I wanted to be strong enough, but Where are you? My apartment. The police. Seo-jun. I couldn't finish the sentence, couldn't find words for the violation surrounding me. Don't move. I'm coming. 15 minutes. That's how long it took for Ihan to arrive personally. No fleet of SUVs, just him in the black Genesis, taking stairs 2 at a time until he stood in my doorway. His expression when he saw the apartment was terrible in its stillness. No rage, no shock, just cold calculation as his eyes tracked the destruction, the photographs, the message. When his gaze finally landed on me sitting among the wreckage, something in his face softened. He crossed the room in 3 strides and wrapped his coat around my shoulders, the leather still warm from his body. Then he pulled me to my feet and against his chest, one hand cradling the back of my head while I finally let myself break against him. You're never going back here, he said into my hair, his voice steady and absolute. This place is gone. Whatever you need, we'll replace it. But you're done living somewhere he can reach. I nodded against his chest, breathing in leather and rain and that electric charge that meant safety in the most dangerous form. Heavy footsteps on the stairs announced more arrivals. Detective Kim entered with 2 uniformed officers, his expression carefully neutral when he saw Ihan holding me. Kong Ihan, the detective said, hand resting casually on his service weapon. We need to ask Mr. Min some questions about his whereabouts the last 3 days. Ask them. Ihan didn't release me, but shifted so I was slightly behind him, protected by his body. Detective Kim's eyes hardened. Alone. Away from you. No. My voice surprised me, stronger than I felt. I stepped out from behind Ihan, still wrapped in his coat. Whatever you need to ask, you can ask with him here. Mr. Min, we have reason to believe you're being held against your will. Detective Kim pulled out his phone, showing me the missing persons report with Seo-jun's signature. Your boyfriend filed. Ex-boyfriend. I corrected, the word sharp as glass. And I'm not being held against my will. Then why haven't you contacted anyone? Your sister has been worried. Your former employer received threats. Because the law failed me. The words exploded out, months of fear and frustration finding their target. I filed a restraining order. You didn't enforce it. I reported stalking. You did nothing. Seo-jun's father bought your compliance, and now you're here pretending to care about my welfare when you ignored me begging for help. Detective Kim's jaw tightened. Mr. Min, I understand you're upset. Look around. I gestured at the destruction, at the photographs of my body displayed like trophies. Seo-jun did this. Broke into my home repeatedly, violated my privacy, destroyed my work. Where were you then? Where were the police when I needed them? The detective's expression shifted, perhaps seeing the apartment's state for the first time beyond his mission to arrest Ihan. His eyes caught on the photographs, and something like shame flickered across his features. "You're protecting a criminal," he said quietly, looking at Ihan. "When he falls, you fall with him." Ihan's hand found mine, our fingers lacing together. "Ask him yourself," he said, his deadly calm more threatening than any weapon. "Am I holding him against his will?" Detective Kim looked at me, really looked, and I knew this was the moment. The choice that would define everything after. "I'm staying with him," I said clearly, squeezing Ihan's hand. "By choice. Because he's the only one who actually protected me when the law couldn't be bothered." The detective's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his expression hardened. "Prosecutor Choi wants you both brought in for questioning." Ihan smiled, sharp and dangerous. "Tell Prosecutor Choi I'll be happy to answer his questions. With my lawyers present. And perhaps we can discuss how his son has been stalking and terrorizing an Omega for 6 months while his office looked the other way." The standoff stretched between them, two different kinds of power measuring each other in my destroyed apartment. Finally, Detective Kim stepped back. "This isn't over," he warned. "No," Ihan agreed. "It's not." But as the police left and Ihan guided me out of the apartment that had become a crime scene and a cage, I realized something had shifted. I wasn't being rescued anymore. I was choosing my side in a war I hadn't started, but would damn well finish. Ihan's penthouse occupied the top floor of a tower overlooking the Han River, all glass and clean lines and space that felt impossibly vast after my cramped apartment. The guest room he showed me had its own bathroom, a bed large enough for 3 people, and windows that framed Seoul's lights like a painting. "Separate bedrooms," he said, setting my single salvaged bag on the bed. Most of my belongings had been too destroyed to keep. "I'm not Seo-jun. You get privacy. Boundaries. Choice." That first night, I barely slept. Too quiet. Too safe. My body didn't know how to exist without fear humming beneath my skin. But slowly, the penthouse became something else. I woke the second morning to the smell of sesame oil and vegetables. Found Ihan in the kitchen, still in sleep-rumpled clothes, hair not yet styled, assembling bibimbap with the focused precision he brought to everything. He looked younger like this, almost domestic. "You cook?" I asked from the doorway. "I survived alone in Itaewon for years." He didn't look up, arranging the vegetables in perfect color-coordinated sections. Learning to cook was cheaper than eating out. He served me without ceremony, and we ate in comfortable silence while morning light painted the Han River gold beyond the windows. The sticky notes started appearing after that. Small squares of yellow paper in his sharp handwriting. Suppressants on counter. "Weich. Meeting until 8. Food in fridge. Weich. Your sister called. She's safe. Weich." Each note a small reassurance that I wasn't alone, wasn't forgotten, wasn't just another problem he'd filed away in his empire of organized violence. The walls between us started blurring in tiny increments. Him leaving his office door open while he worked, the soft sound of his voice on phone calls in Korean and English bleeding into my space. Me sketching in the living room instead of hiding in my bedroom, rebuilding my art portfolio with supplies he'd ordered without asking. Expensive brands I'd never been able to afford. "You're good," he said one evening, studying a canvas over my shoulder. "Really good. Seo-jun was an idiot to try to destroy this." "He was afraid," I replied, not looking up from the painting, "that I'd be good enough to leave him." "You were always good enough to leave him," Ihan said quietly. "He just convinced you otherwise." 2 weeks into this strange domesticity, my body betrayed me. I woke in the middle of the night feverish and trembling, my suppressants failing under the accumulated stress. Heat was approaching. Not full heat yet, but the warning signs that made my skin too sensitive, my scent too sweet, my body preparing for something I'd been chemically preventing for years. I stumbled to the balcony, needing air, needing space from the bedroom that suddenly felt too small. Seoul glittered below, millions of lights pretending the darkness between them didn't exist. "Jaehyun." Ihan's voice came from behind me, rough with something that might have been sleep or concern or the alpha instinct that must have woken him the moment my scent changed. "I'm fine," I lied. "You're going into heat." He stayed in the doorway, giving me space even as every line of his body screamed tension. "Your suppressants are failing." "I know." I gripped the balcony railing, the metal cool against my overheated palms. "I'll call a doctor tomorrow. Get new ones." "Jaehyun." "The first kiss wasn't real," I interrupted, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. "At Club Venom. That was survival. Desperation. Not choice." Silence stretched between us, filled with the distant sound of traffic and the Han River's whisper. "I know," Ihan said finally. "Do you?" I turned to face him, this alpha who'd protected me and fed me and left me sticky notes and never once demanded anything in return. Because I need you to know that when I kiss you again, it won't be because I'm scared or because I need saving or because my biology is making choices for me. Something dangerous flashed in his eyes. Then why would you kiss me? Because I want to. The admission felt like stepping off a cliff. Because somewhere between the Pojangmaka and the warehouse and the sticky notes, you stopped being the monster I kissed to survive and started being someone I didn't finish the sentence. Couldn't. But Ihan crossed the balcony in 3 strides, his hand cupping my face with that same gentleness that always contradicted his reputation. Then let's make this one real, he said, and kissed me. Not the desperate claiming from Club Venom. Not survival or performance. This was honest and burning and achingly real. His mouth on mine, my hands fisting in his shirt, soul's lights blurring into nothing as the world narrowed to this moment, this choice, this truth. His alpha scent wrapped around me, leather and rain and electricity, and my omega biology surged in response, heat accelerating, body preparing for something more. Ihan pulled back with visible effort, his breathing ragged, hands still cradling my face like I was something precious and breakable. Not like this, he said, voice rough. Not when your biology is deciding for you. I chose. When you're mine, it'll be because you chose me. He pressed his forehead to mine, trembling with restraint. Not because suppressant failure made the decision. I won't take what you can't give freely. My heart cracked open at that, at his respect, his control, his understanding that consent mattered even when instinct screamed otherwise. His phone shattered the moment, buzzing violently from inside. Ihan's entire body went rigid as he read the message, his face transforming from gentle to lethal in a heartbeat. What? I demanded. His eyes met mine, dark with promise and fury. Seo-jun just took your sister. Before I tell you what happens next, subscribe to Starry-Eyed Lovers, and tell me where you're watching from. The Shilla Hotel glittered with old money and new power, crystal chandeliers casting expensive light over Seoul's elite gathered for the annual Prosecutor's Charity Gala. Ironic, really, that Prosecutor Choi would host an event about justice while his son terrorized an Omega with impunity. But that's why we were here. I wore a tailored black suit Ihan had commissioned, the fabric moving like water against my skin. In my pocket, hidden against the silk lining, sat the wire Agent Park had given me 2 hours earlier. Just get him to confess, the agent had said, his eyes too eager, too hungry for the arrest that would make his career. I'd taken the wire. Let them think I'd cooperate. Ihan stood beside me now, his hand resting lightly on my lower back as we navigated the crowd. He knew about the wire. I'd told him immediately, another choice in a long line of them. He'd simply smiled that dangerous smile and said, "Let them listen." Cameras flashed as we moved through the gala. Seoul's underground king and his Omega, making their first public appearance together at an event full of the very people who'd failed to protect me. The irony was delicious. Jaehyun. The voice cut through champagne conversations and string quartet melodies. I turned, and there he was. Choi Seo-jun, in an expensive suit that couldn't hide the desperation in his eyes. His father must have pulled strings to get him admitted after everything. After Jiwoo's rescue, after the restraining order violations, after the breaking and entering charges that somehow kept getting buried. The crowd quieted, sensing drama the way wealthy predators always did. "You're making a mistake," Seo-jun said, loud enough for our audience. His smile was the practiced charm he'd used to trap me the first time, before I'd learned that pretty words could hide ugly intentions. "He's using you. Can't you see that?" Ihan's hand tightened slightly on my back, but he didn't speak. This was my moment. My choice. Using me? I stepped forward, away from Ihan's protective touch, and the wire in my pocket felt suddenly appropriate. Let everyone hear this. The way you used me? Isolated me from my friends, destroyed my art, stalked me for months, broke into my home, threatened my sister. Seo-jun's mask cracked. I loved you. Everything I did was because I loved you. No. My voice carried across the silent ballroom, and I felt the weight of hundreds of eyes, dozens of cameras. Agent Park somewhere in the crowd, listening through his earpiece. Ihan behind me, giving me the space to fight my own battle. You loved controlling me. There's a difference. He's a criminal. Seo-jun's voice climbed, edges fraying. A gangster. He's probably threatening you right now, forcing you to. I'm not owned by you, I said clearly, and this time I turned, extending my hand toward Ihan. He took it without hesitation, his fingers lacing through mine. I'm not saved by him. I'm choosing him. The ballroom erupted. Flashbulbs exploded like stars. I heard Agent Park swearing through the wire, knew the federal case was evaporating. Hard to prove coercion when the victim chose their alleged captor in front of Seoul's elite with cameras recording every word. Social media would be erupting. The prosecutor's son confronting his ex and the Mafia boss at a charity gala. The Omega who chose the criminal over the law. Let them talk. Ihan's hand tightened on mine, and when he leaned close, his whisper was for me alone. You just chose the hardest path. I smiled, feeling lighter than I had in months. I chose my path. Seo-jun moved. Fast, desperate, lunging across the space between us with hands reaching for my throat, 6 months of obsession and rejection finally breaking through his civilized veneer. But I didn't freeze, didn't cower, didn't wait for Ihan to protect me. I stepped forward, meeting Seo-jun's attack with the self-defense training Ihan had insisted on over the past week. Caught his wrist, twisted, used his momentum against him. He hit the marble floor hard, and I stood over him, the Omega he'd thought was prey. You don't scare me anymore, I said quietly, for his ears only. You never will again. Security descended. Real security this time. Not the bought-off police who'd ignored my restraining orders. They hauled Seo-jun away as he screamed accusations and threats. His father's face ashen as his son's carefully constructed image shattered in front of witnesses who couldn't be silenced or bought. Ihan's hand found my waist, pulling me against his side. His voice held unmistakable pride when he said, "That's my Omega." The gala dissolved into chaos, reporters shouting questions, guests whispering scandals, Agent Park vanishing into the crowd with his useless wire and broken case. Ihan guided me out through a service exit, and we left them all behind. The penthouse was quiet when we returned, Seoul spreading below us in a sea of lights. Dawn was approaching, painting the Han River in shades of gold and rose. I stood on the balcony where we'd kissed, where my heat had threatened to make choices for me, where Ihan had pulled back because consent mattered more than instinct. He joined me, 2 glasses of whiskey in hand. We drank in silence, watching the city wake. "I'm not your Omega because you protect me," I said finally. Ihan turned to face me, curiosity and something deeper flickering in his eyes. "Then why?" "Because I protect you too." I set down my glass and took his hand, threading our fingers together the way I had at the gala. "You spent 15 years building walls around yourself, becoming the monster who keeps worse monsters away. But monsters need protecting too. Need someone who sees the human underneath and chooses them anyway." His free hand came up to cup my face, thumb brushing my cheekbone with devastating gentleness. "You see me?" "I see you," I confirmed. "The orphan who survived. The king who protects. The man who leaves sticky notes and cooks bibimbap and pulls back even when he doesn't want to because my choice matters more than his desire." "Jae-hyun, I choose you," I interrupted, the words I'd said at the gala taking on new meaning here, private and true. "Not because you're my only option. Not because I'm afraid. Not because my biology demands it. I choose you because somewhere between the kiss that started this and the moment you let me fight my own battle, I fell in love with the monster who taught me how to be strong." Ihan kissed me as the sun rose over Seoul, and this time there was no pulling back, no hesitation. Just choice and desire, and the understanding that love wasn't about caging or saving. It was about standing together in the darkness and choosing each other anyway. When we finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, he pressed his forehead to mine. "My Omega," he whispered. "My Alpha," I answered. And in the city below, Seoul kept spinning, unaware that 2 monsters had found each other and decided that together, they were unstoppable.